get started, first, I wanted to let you know that we are recording this session, and I put a link in the chat where you'll be able to find this recording after today. If you wanted to review anything or share that with your colleagues who were not able to join us today. Usually takes us a few days to get a recording processed and up on the website, but that will be there as well. We are going to be working live in the MTN, so we won't be, we don't have a PowerPoint slide deck, so you won't see that there, but you'll be able to follow along with the recording and even fast forward through areas where you may already be up to speed on some of these things. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, we hosted a session last week, or maybe the week before that, that was the MTN Basics for Secure Users. And so I put a link to that in the chat as well. If you feel like you need to review some of the basics of the MTN, that might be a good webinar to review. In that session, we focused on logging in and how you can make sure that you have access to all of the pages in the MTN, which I think is helpful. And then we reviewed some of the more basic reports as well. So keep that in mind if you feel like you want to just review that really quickly. Please go out there and look at that recording as well. So today we have 3 main agenda items for advanced users that we want to cover. And my colleagues, Katie Giardello and Donna Petrus, who have been involved in our transfer work over the last few years, are going to be walking through some of the topics today. If you haven't done so already, in addition to following along on the screen, if you have the capability of logging into the MTN, and then we want to leave plenty of time for you to be able to do things live as well, and let us and kind of follow along as you're looking at some of these things. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead and log in. We will also use the chat to answer questions. And so while Donna and Katie are presenting, I'll make sure that we use the chat. I'll either answer your questions in the chat, or if it requires Donna or Katie to walk through some of those things, we'll do that as well. So that's just a little bit of the welcome and overview today. I do want to mention before I turn it over to Katie that we learned a couple of weeks ago during National Transfer Student Week that the National Institute for the Study of Transfer Students recognized the My Transfer website as a best-in-class transfer website. And so I'm really proud of that. I have been saying this is like my 3rd child. So I think that recognition is really amazing. But it's also incredible for the state of Michigan, because as I don't have to remind all of you how decentralized our governance structure is in Michigan. And so the fact that we are recognized for providing such great resources to students, I think speaks to a few things. One is the commitment that all of you have to transfer students and providing valuable information to transfer students. But I also think how important it is that we can demonstrate that even with a decentralized governance structure, that we're able to do what's right for students when it comes to transferring. So congratulations to all of you. I see several names on here of folks who have been involved who were actually involved with the macro website when it was award-winning about 15 years ago. And then those of you who are involved in the development of this as well. So congratulations. Like I said, we have 3 main topics that we want to cover today, and hopefully we're planning on doing breakout sessions so we can leave a little bit of time to do some of those more individual questions as well. The 3 things we want to cover today that in this advanced session are updating your institutional information, and Katie will show you where that appears on the website, and also how you can update that information as a secure user. I will tell you that and sorry, Katie, I know I'm probably stealing a little bit of your presentation, but the institutional information, all institutions' profile pages are the second most popular page on the entire website. So only after students looking up their course equivalencies, the second place they often go to is to look up that institutional information. So this is a really important page for us, and we want to make sure that that information is out there. Then we're going to transition into an area of the website at the request of registrars at the universities, and then at the request of community colleges as well. Donna's going to go over a really cool feature that we have on the secure user area of the website that allows community colleges to add the courses that they include in the various distribution areas of the MTA. And then we have a really new feature that allows universities to provide additional information about their MTA courses as well. So Donna will go over that. The third area that we want to look at is some more advanced purposes or more advanced uses of the reports that are available in the secure area. So we will break out into groups just so we can have some smaller groups. Donna and Katie and I will manage each one of those groups, but if there are questions, we wanted to give a little bit more space for that with a smaller number of people. When we do those breakouts, we will look at 3 different reports. The first one is the duplicate equivalencies report, which is really helpful if your institution, all of your institutions upload equivalencies. And so this is a terrific quick report to see if you have duplicates in the database. That's important because duplicates give us more records than we really need, and it tends to be confusing for students if they're seeing multiple records that say the same thing. It kind of begs the question of what's the difference between these equivalencies. We'll also look at the credit hour report, which has come to our attention over the last few years when students are transferring credit and the course may be 4 credit hours at the sending institution and 3 credit hours at the receiving institution. The credit hour report, while it's not perfect, may help you see where students could be losing credit by attrition, if you will, because they're taking extra credits at the sending institution, but those little tiny additional credits are not meeting degree requirements, with the exception of kind of the general credit hour threshold that's required of most bachelor's degrees. And then finally, we will look at the course equivalency matrices. We have made a significant use of those matrices through the project that we did with the MyTransfer Pathways. But we find that there are some colleges that are making some really good use of those reports particularly to help faculty, programs, departments get a better picture of how their credits transfer to other institutions or how they accept credits from other institutions. So those are the 3 main areas we'll focus on today. With that said, I am going to turn it over to Katie, who I think Katie, you'll be able to share your screen and walk us through the institutional information. And we can see your screen, Katie. It looks good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Are you seeing the background as well, the desktop background, or just the screen?
I just see find colleges. I just see the MTN page you're looking.
Perfect. That's what I was hoping for. Okay, so I popped this into the chat. This is the link where you can find on the public facing site all of the institutional profile pages. And as you can see, they are broken into 3 lists by community college, public university, and independent college and university. I am currently logged in as a Delta user. It's a faux account that we use for some of our training purposes. I think it's easier for all of you if my view looks similar to what yours does as an institutional login. If you haven't yet, there's a button at the bottom of the page that you should see yours. If you haven't logged in, it should say log in. If you're already logged in, and you'll know it's correct if it says log out. I don't want you to log out. I'd like you to log in if you do have that capability. But I wanted to show you the institutional profile page that we will look at in the dashboard, the secure user dashboard, here in just a minute. It interfaces with this page here. And so for Delta, which is the pretend college that I work at, this is what shows to the public. And again, I'm going to show you in just a moment what it looks like on the back end and how this information gets seeded. But this is what it looks like to the public. And Delta users, or yourselves as users as well, have the opportunity to add the photograph here. You get to choose logo and branding colors for your institution. And then you get to add all of this information here. We, in a moment, when we get into the dashboard, you'll see we have little boxes that actually request the URLs for certain areas, but we also provide some generic boxes where you can add information that you feel like isn't captured by those categories. The other thing that I think is important, and I'm going to try to make my page a little bigger here, is at the very bottom of the page, it provides some information on when your information was updated. So you can see that Emily Clement, who is the transfer liaison at Delta College, updated the institutional profile, which is what we're going to look at on the dashboard in a minute, on May 17th. The course equivalencies were last updated for my institution of Delta by Terry Gould on September 30th. And then you can also see the full list of all of the users on your team at the bottom of that page. So this could be useful for some of you who aren't sure if who has access. The other thing I'm going to show you real quick is to make sure you know what kind of access you have. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to scroll all the way up. And if you are logged in, you're going to see in the top left-hand side of the page a button for dashboard. So I'm going to click dashboard. And Erica, I am not looking, or Donna, I'm not looking at the chat. So if I need to stop for any reason, please feel free to interrupt me. So I've clicked dashboard. This is the dashboard. In the middle of the dashboard, you're going to see if there are any salient announcements, and then you're going to see all of the manuals and instructions that we have provided for the site right in the center of the page. The actual dashboard where you're going to navigate to kind of find the stuff that you want to do in the site is over here on the left. And it is going to show up, it should show up in, you should see your institution's logo at the top of that, and then you're going to be able to scroll down here. I'm going to click my institution in a moment. That's where we're going to be looking at how you can enter information. But I do want to show you real quick, if you click on the users tab, which is what I just did, you're going to be able to see all of your colleagues and what permissions they have. So if you get to a place once we get into the institutional info where you're not able to do something, it's because you do not have this update institutional info permission. And so I wanted to point that out to you all so that there's no confusion up front. If you don't have that, you can't actually manipulate your information. So this is me down here at the bottom. I'm Delta user, and I have that permission to update institutional info as well as these other permissions here. If you have add users and set permissions on your access, you can add your own access and go ahead and actually give yourself access to whatever you want in the site. If not, you need to find the person at your institution who has that and request that they give you the access that you may want to have. And in this case, as we look at update institutional info, if you believe you're someone on your campus who should have that access, then you need to ask whomever has the permission to add users to give that access to you. So I'm going to go back over to the dashboard. I'm going to click on my institution. And this is the backend interface where you can see all of the details that we just looked at together on the public page. You can see the branding information. If I wanted to update it or edit it, I would click edit, and then I would be able to just go ahead and add a file here. If we got a new logo or I wanted to choose a different one, same thing with the photograph. I can go ahead and click browse and do the same thing there. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to mess up Delta's lovely page. But you can see all of the information on the top is pretty standard basic information. And then we start to go down into the different category boxes that I was alluding to earlier. And you're going to see if we click in edit, there are actually a number of different categories within the transfer guidance section that could be added if you have the requisite information. So at Delta, they have all of their transfer information really on one page. So they didn't need to go in and add other information for transferring from outside of Michigan or reverse transferring. But if you all have these special web pages, you can certainly add them. You can also click add URL. So if there is something that you would like to include for transfer guidance that you don't feel is adequately described in the categories that we provide, you can add a title. So you could say transfer scholarships, although I believe there is a different section for scholarships, but you could say that, and then you might have a link here that you would add for transfer scholarships, and then it would show up on the page that way. Again, I'm not going to do that now because I don't want to mess up their lovely site, but that is what's available under transfer guidance. Under My Transfer Pathways, we have 10 of these My Transfer Pathways agreements currently live. And I just talked with Emily, and I'm not shaming her or throwing her under the bus, but she knows that she has some additional links to provide, and she will be putting her request into the queue for IT to deliver these. But this is where the links go for the information that you're providing to students related to your participation in those My Transfer Pathways. Now at Delta, their pages are all different. They have a different page for each pathway. At many of our colleges and universities that participate in the My Transfer Pathways, that information might all be on one page, and that's okay. We would still recommend that you put in a link for each one of the pathways, even if it's pointing students to the same page. And the reason for that is because in addition to the Find Colleges and Universities page, which pulls all of these details into your public profile, those links that you provide are also aggregated down here on the Transfer Your Associate Degree page that is visible to the public. So biology is one of the phase 1 transfer pathways, and all of the institutions that have provided a link for student-facing materials on the biology pathway will show up here with that link, and I'll just show you Delta's. And you can see again that Delta has disparate pages for each pathway, and it showcases all of the information that they're providing for that pathway. So this is sometimes misunderstood. Sometimes people think that this is a listing of all participants. That is not what this is. This is a listing, and it says that here, of institutions that participated in the agreement and have provided links. We would really like to see more institutions providing those links, so I wanted to make sure I called that out and let you know that the best way to figure out what you should create is to look at what your sister colleges and universities have created. Erica, are there questions that I should address before I move on?
No questions yet, Katie, but I wanted to point out, and maybe you said this, but on any of the pages, if your institution provides, you can use the same link multiple times. So if we're updating your institutional information, and for example, we recently added information about virtual visits and visiting campus, given the pandemic, those policies have changed at institutions, and we worked with Macro to add that here. And so just be aware that you can add the same URL multiple times. And Katie, but there is some consistency in this, because if we look back on Delta's page, it still will say virtual events and it will say visit information, even if it will say the same thing on your public page, even if you provided us with the same link, it will say virtual visit and visit information.
Correct. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so let's see here. I'm going to just scroll through and make sure. I don't know that I need to go through each one of these categories with you all, but you can see these are pretty standard things that students might be looking for information for or about anyway. One thing that's quite important is that you make sure that you have the requisite contacts loaded in to the contact form area, because another area that's available to the public is over here when you scroll down. Sorry, I might need to go to the, when you scroll down here and want to click contact institutions, if someone wants to reach out to Delta, they will be asked to add, of course, their information, but then they're asked to add a category. And if your institution has not provided the requisite contact information or email addresses for these different categories, then the student may be misrouted. So back over here, I'm now back in the dashboard. This is where you do that. At the very bottom of your institutional profile page, there's this contact form addresses where you can go ahead and edit and make sure that there's someone listed for each one. So if I were to take one of these out, that would no longer show up as a viable option in the contact form for Delta. So these are just some good things if you haven't checked it out on your own page to make sure that you do so. The only other thing that I would like to point out is we also have, and I'm skipping over it because I think it's up here. Under transfer guidance, we are asking specifically for a link for the Michigan Transfer Agreement, or MTA, and that will show up on your institutional profile page, as I'm sure you can imagine. In the middle of the page, it'll say my transfer pathway, or Michigan Transfer Agreement, excuse me, MTA. But this is also another page where we have a public facing site or a page here for the Michigan Transfer Agreement. And much like it does for the My Transfer Pathways, this page aggregates all of the links that you all have provided related to the MTA. So I just wanted to point that out. In addition to being available on the Fine Colleges and Universities institutional profile pages, the MTA and the My Transfer Pathways links are also on those other public facing pages. I will ask Eric. Yep, go ahead, Donna.
I was just going to say, Katie, I realize you're almost done, but as you're clicking through, there's a little bit of a delay in terms of what we're seeing on when you're sharing your screen.
Okay.
So maybe just slow down those clicks so that people can follow exactly the path that you're doing. I don't know if anybody has any questions related to that or want you to go back and review anything, but I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
And I was going to stop and ask what else I could show you all, or what questions this may have garnered from you guys as you're looking at what I'm doing. I'm looking at the chat. I'm seeing that you've got a couple comments. Someone did mention COVID, so I will mention that that's a new thing that we added to the site to make sure that folks could input any information they may want to share related to your campus's coronavirus response, or any special policy updates related to admissions, transfer credit, advising, et cetera, as a result of COVID. Okay, so your public information shows up on Fine Colleges and Universities, the MTA page, the Transfer Your Associate Degree page, and then also that contact form that comes at the bottom of either the front page, or there's actually not a contact on any of these drop downs, but it shows up here. So those are the places that you'll find your public information. And then, as I said, under the dashboard, you click My Institution, and that's where you can see that information that shows to the public. Without any questions or comments, I think I am turning it over to Donna.
Thank you, Katie. I'm going to share my screen at this point. Is everyone seeing my screen at this point?
Yes.
Perfect. As Erica mentioned earlier, I'm actually going to go over some of the MTA information, and I'm kind of starting at this point just to give you a sense of a navigation perspective. And as Katie mentioned, also under the dashboard, there is an MTA and general education link here. When you click on that, you actually, when you get to that, you actually are able to see all of the information related to MTA courses. I wanted to kind of bring up this full list to start with. And as you can see, there are a multitude of records in here currently, which is great to see. There's a little over 1,600 records by institution. Let me go up and show you the categories here. By institution, by distribution area, by subject, the actual course number, the title of that course, and then the credit hours. Since we're using Delta as an example, I'm going to filter for Delta under institutions. I can choose Delta College. I can also have the option to filter for distribution area. Here you'll see that Delta College has actually entered in over 300 records. Part of that is also related to the fact that Katie and I offered institutions assistance with this. So we have helped a few institutions input their information, and we can continue to do that. So if you have limited resources on your campus and you need help getting your information into this area, just reach out to Katie or I and we can help you with that. One distribution area I want to point out is under quantitative reasoning. And the reason I chose this was to show that under syllabus, you can actually see that there's a hyperlinked information here for that actual course syllabus for Math 118W. If I click on syllabus, it will actually download a PDF for me and open that syllabus, which is really very useful, especially for not only advising, but for institutions as they're evaluating the information from an equivalency perspective. There's a couple of places you can get to that syllabus, and I'll mention that in a minute. One other thing I wanted to point out was, I'm going to change this from mathematics to social sciences. And for Delta, you'll see, got to get to the right area down here, that in some cases, their course actually also covers an additional distribution area. So in addition to the social sciences distribution area, that course here also satisfies humanities. So there's a comments area up here that you can use that also helps with clarifying for advisors and students how those distributions are covered. Go back for a second. One other thing I wanted to point out here was under the general education requirements for MTA receivers. Erica mentioned this a little earlier related to the four-year institutions who might be on this call. Right now, there's no records found. So we strongly encourage you to look at this area and be able to provide information as to how and explain how you're manually going to upload that MTA course into your institution. So this is really helpful here, provides the detailed information on how to do that. So let me go back here and I'm going to pick all. And I'm going to pick, let me do an example here of EMU. You'll see here too that no records are found under the MTA courses themselves. So, but for institutions where they are transferring out information and offer those MTA basic courses, it's Baker has actually included that information. So again, the four-year schools have not utilized this area as much as we would like to see. So we would strongly encourage those who are on the call to really look at this and evaluate this as an option. One other thing that I'd like to show you is under the doc repository. Again, I'm going to pick on Delta a little bit here, and you'll see that that 118 course that we had mentioned earlier was uploaded to the document repository area as a course syllabus curriculum document, and that automatically then imports into the MTA area as a link. So the more you upload your syllabi, the more links you will see. Gotta get to the right area or the right link.
And I just want to mention, you should all be able to see this interface, even if you do not have the access to manipulate this area of the back end.
Mm-hmm.
If that is not true, go ahead and let me know, but that is what I believe to be true, that everyone should be able to see this area, even if you do not have that permission to be adding the new courses or the new information.
Thank you, Katie. That's a good point to make. So yes, let us know. Maybe in the chat if you want to respond to Katie's comment there, that would be very helpful for us. The other thing I wanted to point out to you was these options up here, besides the filtering. If you have the ability to enter and edit this area, you can create a new course, and then you can also export this information to a comma delimited file if you want to review that for your institution or perhaps a destination that you're interested in, or you have a student who for your institution who wants to see those courses. So to create a new course is really very simple. You would then pick the distribution area the actual subject and course, enter in the title and the credit hours. Effective date and end date. Some institutions use this more widely than others. If you have regular review of your courses at your institution, you could also add the effective date, when it begins and when it ends. And then again, as I mentioned to you before, Delta used the comment section to clarify the fact that one of their social sciences courses also satisfied humanities. Looks like there's some questions or comments in the chat.
Donna, I'm just adding, supplementing with the comments in the chat.
Perfect.
There is a question related to dates. The dates are not required, Chuck. So you do not have to add the dates. It's most helpful once you've decided that you're no longer using a certain course for the MTA, and then I would actually recommend that you would want to go in and add an end date, but it is not required in the upload.
That is correct. And again, here you can just go through and add another course, and as you enter that information in, you can click save, and that would be saved for that institution. Just going to cancel out of here.
So there's another question related to changing classes. Is it better to put an end date or just delete a course? I'm a big fan of the end dating because you might have students who've taken that course, and it should actually be able to be applied based on when it was listed in the MTA. But this is all done manually, so that does make it a little bit more challenging to have to update it.
This is just to give you some sense of the great amount of records we have, which is really encouraging. And this is just under social sciences. All the distribution areas are listed here. That English composition, and then that second English or communication course, you can clarify. Social sciences, humanities, and fine arts. We've also given you the opportunity here to specify lab or no lab under the natural sciences area. Katie can speak to this more than I can because she did a much more work on this. You'll notice that there are a number of mathematics courses listed in here, and that was a result of work that was done through the Math Right at the Math.
Easy for you to say.
It is a mouthful. Right Math at the Right Time project. So if you do look at this information here, you'll see that a number of math courses are actually inputted for a very wide range of institutions. The syllabus, you'll see here that there's some explanation here under the comments, as well as some of the start and end dates. And again, where that syllabus has been uploaded to the doc repository, it also automatically appears here as a link. Any other questions in the chat, or any other questions someone would like to reference or raise their hand?
There is another question. Just to clarify, if we add in any of our courses that meet MTA, these need to be entered manually, correct? Yes. We have said to campuses, this is sort of a heavy lift up front, but then typically, and maybe I'm wrong here, but typically you don't see a lot of change to your MTA distribution list. So if you can make that investment up front, you should be good to go for a while. And then it's just a manual update if you have new courses to add, or courses that you either want to take off or put those end dates on for if they come off your list.
And I will do a side comment here about the syllabi and the doc repository. For those of you that were active in the, let me change the filter on this. If you were active in the actual MI transfer project, Pathways project, we were using a different repository for courses that is no longer going to be used. That was Dropbox, not Dropbox, Canvas. So if you would want to make sure that your syllabus is available for evaluation, it's really important that you go through here and actually input that information.
Thanks, Donna. And if you're not looking at the chat, another question was asked related to the permission required to be able to manipulate this page. The permission is actually called Manage MTA Courses, and I'm wondering if we need to update that because we do have a secondary part of this site now that is also related to gen ed, but I think it's all the same. So we don't necessarily need to update it here, but we do have 2 functions that are in that area, but you do need to have the permission to manage MTA courses to be able to add new documents and such and new courses.
One thing I wanted to point out too is that when you actually go to the document repository, you'll see that if it is an MTA course, it will note that here in that description. So it kind of goes both ways between the doc repository and the MTA course information.
And Erica did put some instructions in for how you can add that permission. However, if you do not have permission to add users and set permissions, you cannot update your own permissions. So you do have to ask a friend if you don't have that permission currently. And people have gotten a little confused by that. So.
Okay. Any other questions related to the MTA? If not, we can move on. I'll turn it back to Erica to talk about the breakout rooms.
Did you want to go over the general education piece that's related to this, or do you have that on your?
I did not have that on my list, Katie. So if you want to go
Okay.
ahead and talk about that, I wasn't quite sure.
Sure.
This
so,
area?
Yep,
Okay.
this is new. Yep. Do you want me to? If you just pull it
I'll
up,
stop sharing.
Oh,
go ahead.
okay. Okay, sure. I'll just give a quick review of this because this was requested by our community college colleagues. Sorry, I'm tracking election news in addition to talking through all of this. So if you click into the interface, you should see that there are 2 tabs at the top. Donna did a wonderful job going over the MTA courses area. If you click the second tab that says general education requirements for MTA receivers, first you're going to see that nobody has added anything yet. So this will be a plea to our 4-year partners or those of you that receive the MTA, which could include community colleges as well. It was requested that you might be able to go in and actually make add some detail about how you accept the MTA and what other kinds of general education requirements students might be able to take at a 2-year or at a sending school, I suppose. So I am most familiar with Eastern because I've worked there for a little while. So I will try to give an example. I don't think it's actually going to show anything here because there's nothing in the interface. But if I were at Eastern, I'm working at Delta right now, the way that I'm logged in. So we'll see if it will let me do this. And it may not. It is just thinking. If it will let me do this, I'm sorry?
Since I'm logged in, I can go back to do that.
Okay, let's see if you have better luck because it's not letting me.
Katie, I think you're logged in as Delta, maybe?
Right.
I am, but I should still be able to clear it and show them, but Donna can show.
It's not letting me click.
Yeah, the site might be lagging because it's still just
Churning? Yeah, mine's spinning too.
Yeah,
Spinning
it's
wheel.
probably because all 28 of us are in here doing fun things to the system. Or because I was looking at Donald Trump's tweets, one or the other.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I'm
not able
having
to go
trouble getting connected to this site.
No, I'm not able to go anywhere.
Okay, well, we'll move on, but I will just let you know the elevator speech for that interface. If I were at Eastern, what I was going to show you is I could go ahead and add all of my, anything that would be completed by the MTA as far as my gen ed requirements at Eastern, I could add into that interface. And they have some additional requirements at Eastern that many of our 4-year partners do. One being a global, I don't remember what it's called exactly, but it's like a global diversity requirement, and that is allowed to be transferred. So that would be a good opportunity for Eastern to add that requirement. And one of the things that they can say is that it can be completed at the sending or receiving institution, satisfied with the MTA, or they can specify that it must be completed at the receiving institution. I'm in now. It's working fine for me now, by the way, the system is. So our community college partners requested that as a cue to advise their students about what additional gen ed requirements that might not be completely embedded in the MTA they could take at the sending institution before they would transfer to their receiving institution. So hopefully we'll see some more receiving institutions adding those details. One of the things that I've said before and some of you have heard before is we we updated some of these features and then COVID hit. So we didn't do a big push on asking people to seed this data because we know that your campuses have been otherwise prioritized as the pandemic has hit. Okay, sorry, I took over. That is what happens sometimes. Erica, what is your plan for the next segment?
Great. So while I'm setting up the breakout rooms, we have 28 participants minus 3 of us is 25. So it'll be a nice small group of folks coming together. When I went in just a few minutes ago to set up the breakout rooms, I noticed that there is a new Zoom feature where we can let participants choose their room, which is very new to me. My plan was to assign just randomly because this feature wasn't available before. However, I am not prepared to test that feature out today because I have not tested it before, but I definitely will when we're all together next time as a staff.
We can have a popularity contest.
Well, that's what I'm kind of afraid of is what if I get picked last and then there's only 2 people in my room?
Well, you can set your legal team up to dispute it, Erica.
Exactly. So I'm actually going to assign us all into breakout rooms manually. And I will send you to a breakout. If you haven't done this before, you should see a little icon pop up on your screen that says join breakout room. And then when you join the breakout room, you should be in there. And then that is where we'll end our session today. So we will not come back together as a whole group. We'll just stay in those various different breakout rooms. So if you're going to see Donna and Katie, I wish you all the best and have a great weekend. It looks like the weather is going to be beautiful. So wish you the best, and I'm going to send you into breakout rooms right now.